Spider-Man's relationship with the MCU has been on a bumpy ride since its inception. He was held under the rights of Sony for years until around 2015 when Marvel worked out a deal to quote-unquote share Spider-Man, which is why he showed up in Civil War all those years ago. There was even a period where the rights almost went back to Sony completely, but all that was cleared up again, which technically led to all of the really horrible Sony villain solo movies, which honestly are just so terrible that I've been debating on making a video on them. It's been talked about to death. It's a low-hanging fruit, but honestly I think looking at them could be a pretty fun idea to do. I love the character of Spider-Man, and I've loved seeing how different filmmakers have interpreted his character throughout the years, especially when it comes to the Raimi movies. I have very mixed feelings on the MCU Spider-Man though. I rewatched the trilogy of Tom Holland's movies to prepare for this new movie, and my thoughts are as follows. I was pleasantly surprised to revisit Homecoming. It's shocking how much of a real movie it looks in comparison to a lot of other MCU movies. I hate the inclusion of Iron Man and how child-locked Spider-Man feels as a character. I love Michael Keaton as the Vulture in the movie. He's hamming it up and he's having such a fun time in the role. And the scene of him and Peter in the car as he goes to the homecoming dance is honestly one of the top moments in the entire MCU. It's done so well on so many levels. Far From Home is kind of dog shit. Visually it looks like shit. Jake Gyllenhaal is good as Mysterio, but I think he's underutilized a little, and the tie-in for him being wronged by Tony Stark is genuinely terrible writing. No Way Home on a rewatch is a very mixed bag. The point and clap moments are so awkward when you're not in a cinema full of chuds. Again, visually it looks terrible. Case in point, this amazing screen grab here. While it's very fan servicey, I do still always smile at Toby and Andrew just cause they get lost in their roles instantly. Especially seeing Andrew Garfield again is such a treat since he got completely fucked over with his Spider-Man movies. There are people nowadays that are trying to reevaluate his movies, by the way, and I'm sorry, I will never understand that. They are just so bad. The first one is okay. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is probably genuinely one of the biggest pieces of shit I've ever seen in my life. I was, with all this in mind, actually excited for the new entry, as the marketing was making such an effort to make Spider-Man feel real. So I was excited to see how this would translate in a feature film, and just how did it work out exactly. Before we get into the review though, this may be annoying, but of course I gotta ask you to leave a like on this video and please subscribe to the channel, as it really helps out a lot. I'm going to start by talking about the performances, leading with Tom Holland, who's known for his roles in movies like The Odyssey very recently and The Devil All the Time. This is the best version of both Peter Parker and Spider-Man that I've seen Holland portray in any of the movies. I'm not even exaggerating. He makes such an effort to differentiate the two personalities. It's honestly really cool to see. He brings such vulnerability to Peter and makes it heartbreaking to see his character in this movie in comparison to something like Homecoming. As much as he puts on a metaphorical mask, there's this subtle numbness behind his eyes that really showcases the pain that's been carried over since No Way Home. Whenever he's acting as Spider-Man, I feel like there's such a clear distinction. He's much more confident and comfortable when he's in the suit. In fact, I think he wears the suit so often in this movie than he ever has in the past 3 movies. His vocal inflections really give off the way Andrew Garfield portrayed Spider-Man in his movies, especially when it comes to blasting out quips every now and then. It feels funny saying, but it's probably the most New Yorkin both Peter and Spidey have ever been in this franchise, and it's very cool to see. Jon Bernthal is in this movie, reprising his role as the Punisher. Bernthal is known for his roles in movies like The Wolf of Wall Street and Fury. I thought Bernthal did a good job in his role. He's always been such a fitting casting for the Punisher for years, and I was definitely interested to see how they would handle his character in this movie. I think it's very 50-50 in terms of how he's handled, but I'll get into that later. Bernthal made his presence worthwhile on screen. He's less menacing here and brings an essence of silliness to the role that I honestly didn't know he had in him due to his other roles in the past, and honestly it was pretty fun to see here. Mark Ruffalo reprises his role as Bruce Banner in this movie. He's known for his roles in movies like Poor Things and Zodiac. While he has limited screen time here, I thought it was great to see him in this movie. When he portrays Banner, he brings his usual endearment to the role while showing a sympathetic side. As you can tell, there's an element to the way he carries himself, which shows how uncomfortable with himself he feels, but he manages to put up a wall when talking to other people in order to show his more slight happy-go-lucky side. And he communicates this well through his eyes especially. It feels like it's been a long time since Ruffalo was able to portray the character in this way, so I'm glad he's had his moment to shine in this movie, since due to his very correct opinions regarding certain political views, Marvel is most likely going to shaft his character in the future. Oh well. There's a lot to talk about in this movie, especially regarding the next performance that I want to discuss, so take this as your spoiler warning for pretty much the rest of the video going forward. Sadie Sink appears in this movie in the role of Jean Grey. She's known for her roles in movies like The Whale and the Fear Street trilogy. I enjoyed her performance in this movie, even though the direction of her character in this movie is questionable. She carries herself with a lot of charisma, which leads you to getting intrigued by her character. There's an element to her being somewhat threatening, which was interesting to see. There's a sympathetic side to her too, which she manages to portray pretty well in a lot of the latter moments of the movie. Zendaya reprises her role as MJ in this movie. She's known for her roles in movies like Dune and Challengers. I thought she did good in this movie. The evolution of her character throughout this franchise is definitely interesting to witness. There's a point later in the movie where she has a really great monologue to Peter, and it instantly has you hooked onto every word that she is saying. It's thoroughly engaging and provides a great emotional beat to this movie as a whole too. Jacob Batalon reprises his role as Ned Leeds in this movie. He's known for his roles in movies like Taro and Novocaine. His character is pretty much the same as he is in all the other movies, which obviously isn't a bad thing, as his character has always been a highlight. He has a lot of humorous moments, which led him to being very endearing in the role, as always. Now I want to get into the plot of this thing, as I've got a lot to say. Firstly, it's so natural the way they have this movie essentially pick up very soon after No Way Home. It's done very organically. There's a montage near the beginning of the movie showing the type of things Peter has been doing as Spider-Man. The sequence features such a killer needle drop too. In this montage, a shit ton of comic covers get referenced. It's very fan servicey, and while for the fleeting moments they're on screen it's cool to see, it does make you wonder, oh right, these are just for fan service sake. What's interesting is these small moments, I think, to me, is showing us another story which could be interesting, but I'll get into that later once I actually explain the plot of this movie that we have today. Some things that are showcased early on, which I was happy to see, was the portrayal of Spider-Man swinging. It makes you feel like you're there with him as he swings through the streets, which is something that I think was never properly shown in the Jon Watts trilogy. It's embarrassing to compare the two, honestly. I suppose I'll speak about my main issue with this movie. While I think Sadie Sink was good in her role as Jean Grey, it's kind of crazy to me that they thought to set up the X-Men in a Spider-Man movie. I suppose it kind of makes sense, since some people in the MCU universe could maybe think of Peter as a mutant the more they get uncovered in this universe, but I digress. I think it makes the movie feel a little full. Sometimes the Spider-Man plotline stops completely as we're focusing more on Jean when we see more about her. We even basically get her whole backstory as to why she's quote-unquote evil in this movie. Evil obviously is a stretch, but I thought it was a little annoying that they made her the villain here, albeit a sympathetic one, as it's obvious that this is going to lead into why people aren't going to be trustworthy of mutants when the X-Men movie ends up happening. I feel like overall it distracts from a way more interesting story, because the stuff with Peter and him trying to still battle his two lives when he's pretty much completely alone is a great jumping off point to build your character around. Another strange choice in this movie was how they buddied Peter and Frank in this movie. Obviously, since this is PG-13, we don't really see Punisher used to his full potential, let's say. He's nerfed in this movie in terms of the way he handles things, but the knowledge of what his character is capable of is obviously still there, and I feel like with Peter knowing this, he wouldn't be completely friendly with Frank. I feel like he'd be pretty disgusted with a lot of things he does, considering the two very different types of characters that they are. But obviously with the tone of this movie, they had to partner up, but I don't know, for me, it was a little strange. It was great to see Scorpion in this movie, but I do think he was underutilized quite a bit. Again, like I said, there could have been an interesting story here. For example, we see the character Tombstone for literally 10 seconds, played very well by Marvin Jones III, and it got me thinking that this should have been an even smaller scaled movie where Spidey fights a lot of his more thuggish rogues gallery that are under the reign of Tombstone or even Kingpin. With that in mind, they could have shoved Daredevil back into this too, rather than Punisher of all people. One really standout scene I will say is when MJ and Spider-Man are on a building at nighttime. Not only does this nighttime scene look good, but it somehow manages to go from super sweet to heartbreaking so quickly. And while from a writing standpoint you can see the change come from a mile away, I still thought it was a really well done scene. While I think I mainly wish the story went in a different direction from what we got, I still think there is a lot of great merit here. Even the fan-servicey fight scene of Spider-Man, Punisher, and Hulk I thought was admittedly pretty cool. On top of that, it was cool to see a lot of influence from the Insomniac games, from the inclusion of the wolf and another aspect which I'll get into later in this video. Before I get into any other technical aspects though, there is one major thing in this movie that really bothered me, and that was the product placement. Holy shit, this probably has some of the most egregious strategic product placement I've seen in a Marvel movie in quite a while. My god, I think the worst offender in this movie especially is Takis. Now, I like Takis. I'm sure a lot of you do too. And if you don't, well, that's all well and good. But holy fuck, this movie beats you over the head with wanting you to go out and buy Takis after this movie. I actually lost count at how often they were in this movie. Another really bad point is this billboard ad for a BMW on screen for far too long, which makes it very obvious to anyone that what you're seeing is an ad. There's a couple of really bad Samsung product placement especially too, but look, I'm not going to list out every single product placement in this movie because I'll be here all day. It was just a shame to see this in this movie. It's very in your face, and at times it just became a little distracting for me. Now finally I can move on. I want to talk about the cinematography in this movie. The cinematography in this movie was shot by Brett Pollack, who's done cinematography for movies like Short Term 12 and Just Mercy, which are two movies by the same director of this movie, Destin Daniel Cretton. I think this is one of the best looking Spider-Man MCU movies. I think it looks better than Homecoming, which originally was the best looking Spider-Man MCU movie. It's funny as they show clips from the other movies in this movie too, and it's just embarrassing. It's day and night with this movie and the other entries. The web swinging scenes are shot hypnotically that makes it feel like a roller coaster ride, which I suppose further reiterates the claim of superhero movies being theme park movies, eh? The lighting and color grading in this movie especially looked great. There's one small detail here where a character is possessed and is falling and is moving away from a light, and the more the red light disappears from the person's face is meant to visually represent when the person isn't being possessed anymore, and it's just a really cool detail. Apart from that, there isn't a whole bunch of visual language going on throughout the film, but I will say in terms of the action, they really knew how to shoot the action for this movie. It helps as well that the action is really well choreographed too. Shang-Chi, which was directed by the same director, had pretty great action as well, so it makes sense. This movie features some of the more better looking visual effects in a Marvel movie I've seen in quite a while. I suppose one aspect that helps especially is the fact that a lot of costumes people are wearing in this movie are real, especially the Spider-Man costume. This is the best Spider-Man costume the MCU Spider-Man has ever worn. It could possibly be the best Spider-Man costume ever, but I don't know about that just yet. Maybe it's the recency bias talking. There's a lot of shots where the lighting makes it look like he's straight out of an Alex Ross painting. There's a small detail too where his eyes are translucent, and in certain close-ups you can actually see his eyes through the masks, and it's such a great detail. Whenever they want to show Peter's emotion through the mask, you can just see the eyes, and it makes for a really great further emotional point. Back to the visual effects though. There's a lot of pretty good looking moments. There are some elements that do have some dodgy green screen here and there, although nothing will ever compare to this infamous screen grab from No Way Home. I suppose it helps that a majority of this movie is shot on location, which is why a lot of the movie visually is appealing to look at least. I think all I really have left to talk about in this movie is the music. The score for this movie was composed by Michael Giacchino, who's done music for movies like The Batman and The Incredibles. There's some reused pieces of music here which is elevated in this movie. It's redone in an attempt, I believe, to show growth in Peter's character and in his life, and it was really interesting to hear. There's also an element to this score where it feels like they're trying to incorporate music from the Danny Elfman score of the Raimi movies. I don't think the score in this movie is as good as those movies by any means, but it's definitely really enjoyable score for all the scenes that it's used in. The soundtrack in this movie is pretty good. There was a leaked soundtrack that came out a couple of months ago which ended up being completely fake, which is a shame. Now, some of the songs on that soundtrack would have been good to hear, but the songs we have here instead are more than welcome. Especially, like I said, the song that is used in an early montage of this movie. It works well, as it's again meant to mirror Peter's growth, since a lot of the music in Homecoming would give off the aura of the type of music that a rebellious teen would listen to. The music in this movie feels more akin to what a college kid would listen to, which is really cool. Overall, I surprisingly like this movie a lot more than I thought I would. I've completely written off Marvel and the MCU as a whole with the quality of their movies in the past couple of years. It doesn't help as well that at the time of me recording this video especially, with how terrible Marvel has been treating their black characters and black filmmakers and actors, the mishandling needs to be studied. It's actually getting insane how bad it's getting. It also doesn't help the fact that one of the producers on this movie, Avi Arad, used to be in the IOF, so if people hated that guy before for fucking up Spider-Man in the past, there's even more of a reason to hate him now. I will say though, at the very least, the last two MCU movies that came out before this movie were, at most, pretty okay. So maybe they're starting to slightly fall back into the right track again. No matter what the quality of their movies are like, however, their fan base will always remain the same. So I do want to go onto a tangent for a little bit, completely off the cuff. While I did enjoy this movie, I think it probably possessed one of the worst theater experiences I have ever sat through in my entire life. I went to this movie with my girlfriend. The two of us are obviously really big Spider-Man fans, so we were excited to check it out. We were sat behind a row of the worst type of people you could probably imagine, talking through pretty much the entire movie, questioning everything the characters did before anything could get explained, as if these characters could leap out into the screen and explain their actions to them. One person in particular was trying to point and laugh at every little Easter egg that they could get their hands on in the most over-exaggerated, attention-seeking way possible. I could go on and list the terrible things that these people have done, but I may save that for a video in the future about theater etiquette, because my god, it's getting worse with every increasing film that I seem to be going to see lately. It's really odd. It's crazy to me. I'm giving Spider-Man Brand New Day 4 stars. This movie is home to a lot of pretty well-acted performances from a lot of the main cast. Tom Holland especially is the standout as Peter and Spider-Man alike. He really does make an effort to differentiate the two characters here, while still also making it feel whole, as if it's two sides, two personalities of one person. The action is some of the best that it's been in this franchise, which is helped from the great choreography team for this movie. It'll be interesting to see where they take the character from here. It's doing incredibly well in the box office at the time of me recording this video, so there will obviously be making a 5th Spider-Man movie. They will be making Spider-Man movies for years just so that they can hold on to the rights of it, so it will be definitely interesting to see. I just hope they don't shoot themselves in the foot too soon and have a big, grand, spectacle multiverse story all over again. I think Spider-Man works best when he's dealing on a street level in terms of his villains and the types of everyday problems that he faces in his regular, everyday life as Peter Parker. It's one of the most interesting aspects to his character. The contrast of these two things are always really interesting to see in these movies. So when you take the small town first world problems of a young adult in contrast with him fighting multiverse level threats, it gets a little tiring, it gets a little tedious. I still think this movie falls victim to trying to tie it in with other MCU movies that, aren't even out yet. It doesn't do too much to tie it into previous movies, which honestly was pretty welcome to see. I think these Marvel movies always benefit better when they don't try to constantly beat you over the head with reminding you that you had to have watched 10 movies before watching the current one that you're looking at. Fantastic Four, while that movie was kind of just okay, really stood out because it was set in a completely different universe and it didn't have any tie-in to any of the previous MCU movies. It could be enjoyable as a standalone movie. Spider-Man Brand New Day is currently running in theaters, and I highly recommend checking it out on the big screen.